I want to show you how to make some calculations. Now, the instructions for manipulating the data or adding new fields or columns and calculating new columns are contained within the workflow document. So I'm going to add 2 columns to this so I can show you how a couple of these calculations get produced. What we're going to do is take, for example, the number of people who are born in foreign countries, divide it by the total population, and get a percentage foreign born, which is much easier to compare. I mean, that is to say, a tract with more people in it, you would expect, all things being equal, would have more foreign-born people in it. So we're going to normalize that, that's what it's called, by making it a percentage. We'll do the same thing with male. So you're going to create a new column for percent foreign-born, a new column for percent male, and we're also going to take this white alone variable and turn it into percent non-white. And what we have here is the number of people in each census tract who say they are white alone. Well, if we turn that into a percentage, then the complementing percentage would be non-white. So if we have like 50% or 56% are white alone, then 44% would be non-white. And that's what we're going to calculate. And we're also going to calculate population density. Now to do this, what we do is we click Add. And by clicking Add in ARC, we get this new table that opens up. It's called Fields. And this is simply a table about Mid-Atlantic Tract's demography. You could think of it as a meta table, a table about the table, in which we can look at and modify the column information. In this case, I'm just going to add a column and call it percent percent male, and you'll do the same. And I'm going to add another column, and I'll call it. All right, so to save that, I'm just going to exit this table and save all changes, yes, and I'll see my 2 new fields over here on the right-hand side. That's where they get dumped whenever you create new fields. So now what I want to do to calculate these is divide, for percent male, divide 1898 by 3932, or for this column, divide male by population. So I'm going to right-click in percent male, go to Calculate Field, and I'll find those 2 variables. So I'll find male, double-click on it, and divide by population. Now when I do this, I'm going to get an error. Let me show you how that works. Why did I get a mistake? Well, what it did was it calculated this, or it looks like it calculated it successfully, for a while, and then after a while I'll see I have all these zeros. And those zeros start in my data table when one of these population fields one of these tracts didn't have any people in it. So tracts along the ocean side are often uninhabited. They're identified by the Census Bureau for the sake of geographical continuity, but they don't actually have people in them. Some of them are completely underwater. So what I need to do is take a look at my population field and make sure that I'm not calculating this for any tracts that have a population of 0. And if I take population and sort it ascending, I'll see that about 100 out of the 10,000 tracts actually do have a population of 0. Not quite 100, but quite a few. So before I run this calculation here, you might notice I'm leaving this window open. I'm just going to go over here to Select by Attribute and select all the tracts for which population is greater than 0, meaning I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm not going to bother with it for the tracts that are 0. And I'll find that I now have 10,219 out of 10,314 selected, meaning just shy of 100 tracts have no people in them. And now, when I run this calculation again, it doesn't give me the error. It just performs the calculation. So if I scroll over to the right, I can look at percent male, and I'll see, once I scroll past all the tracts that have no people in them, I'll see that it's calculated meaningful percentage male for all the remaining tracts. The ones that have no people in them, it just transposes it as 0. 0% of the no people that live there are male. Now, percent non-white is a little bit more complicated. That's because I'm taking this measurement that is white alone and dividing it by population. That'll give me percent white. But to make it percent non-white, I'm just going to add 1 wrinkle. And bear in mind here, I'm continuing to keep those tracks selected, so I still have about 100 tracks selected that I'm not making this calculation for, and I'm going to put all of this stuff in, I'm going to say 1 minus, and I'm going to open parentheses, meaning I'm saying 100% minus the number of white alone people divided by total population. So I'm saying 1 minus percent white is percent non-white. And when I make that calculation, again, if I scroll past all the zeros, I'll see that I have a meaningful number for all the remaining tracks. Now you're going to continue doing this. You're going to add 2 more fields, percent foreign and population density. Population density is total population divided by area. So you're going to have to create a field that measures the area of each tract. And you do that like this. First I'm going to clear the selection so that I'm making this calculation for all the tracks. I'm going to add another new field, and I'll name it area, just so I remember, in square miles. And I'll save that, make it a double, and then I'll save that, say yes. And now to calculate the area of each tract, I'll right click in here. See that we're still looking at all the tracks that have 0 population at the top. So if you get confused by that, you can always sort it the other way, sort of descending, and then you got numbers everywhere that mean something. Anyway, to calculate the area in square miles, I'm going to right click and go to calculate geometry directly beneath calculate field. And I'm going to measure the property of area in square miles, square statute miles, using the default coordinate system, so I don't need to identify that. It is state plane. It's going to give me the area in square miles. And once it calculates, it takes a second or two, I'll see the area of each of those tracks. Some of them, I guess, are empty tracks. Don't worry about that error if you get it yourself. It's not an error, actually. It's just a warning. And now I know the area of all the tracks in the region, except there are 3 or 4 that don't have any area for some reason. It probably won't affect you, though. So that's how you perform the calculations. You've got 2 more to calculate. You're going to calculate population density and percent foreign born. But that is how you'll perform those calculations. And hopefully you see how to finish this task. Once you do so, you're now ready to export just the tracks that you're interested in. And to do that, I'm going to first exploit that GeoID field. So this GeoID field, as I said before, shows you more than one thing. You can think of it as the name of the tract. 51 is the state ID. 710 is the county ID. So what I want to do is create a new field that just takes these 5 digits so I can identify the counties that those tracts fall within, and then use that information to select out only the tracks I want. So in the workflow, on page, starting on page 14, I explain how this process works. It's a little complicated, but it's I think, really revealing about how GIS works. It's the sort of lesson that once you learn it, it exposes different things that you can do, which is why I have you doing it in this lab. What I'm going to do is create one more field, and that field is named, I named it in the example FIP State County, because these tracks files always used to ship with the FIP State County ID number. That's just what it's called. And this needs to be a text field. So I'm going to exit out of here and say yes, save those changes. And now in my track shapefile, I have one more new field, FIP State County. So I'm going to grab the 5 digits on the left-hand side of this and dump them over in that column by using Field Calculator. Here's a neat trick. I'm going to change this to arcade, and then I'm going to use what's called a left function, which allows me to grab digits from the left-hand side of a field. This only works for text fields, by the way. And I'm going to say left GeoID, and then all of this is inside these parentheses, 5. Now what that means is go to the GeoID field and grab the 5 digits on the left-hand side and dump them in this new field that we're calling Phipp State County. And here it goes. So when it's done over in Phipp State County, I see those 5 digits. That's telling me the state and county that every tract is inside of. And I already know the 3 counties that I'm interested in because I've already looked at them. So I'm opening up the table for region counties, and the 3 counties I need are 1101001, that's Washington, D.C., 24033, and 24031, that's Montgomery and Prince George's counties. And now I'm going to go to Tracts Demography and say Data, Export Features. I'm going to create a file named Region Tracts, just like Region Counties. These are the tracts that make up my study region. Your study region will be slightly different. I'm going to make sure I'm saving that to that folder. And I initiated this by clicking the folder on the right. I always do that so that ARC doesn't randomly send it off to some other location, which it will do. And now I'm going to identify the 3 counties that I'm interested in. So 11011, or Phipp State County equals 24031 is Prince George's, I do believe, or Montgomery, or 24033. Bingo, it worked. And yours will too, if you follow this same workflow. Now the last thing we're going to do is identify a set of tracts that are really close to our locations. And to do that, we're going to use a tool called Selection by Location. So I've clicked on Map, Selection by Location, and here what I'm going to do is put in tracts, my regional tracts, and I want to find the ones that are within a distance of 2 miles of my survey points. So the features that I'm putting in here are my business points. And this won't do anything with these files, it'll just select them. So I'm going to right click and say go, and when I zoom in I see I've identified a set of about 20-25 tracts that I'm going to refer to as my study area. These are the tracts that are closest to my points, and ultimately what I'm going to do is compare those demographic measurements between my study area tracts and the region as a whole. To export these, I'll right click, say Data, Export Features, and I'll name these Study Area. And I'll need to select anything. They're already selected. I'm just going to export the things that already are selected. And I might just symbolize these uniquely so that I can find them when I need them. They're green now. There they are. And I can get rid of that selection by clicking this empty clear button, or I could also click the clear button at the top. And when I zoom out, you can see I've got those geometries together. I've got what I need to finish the lab. In fact, I'm just 1 or 2 steps away from completing the lab at this point.